Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Southerners Northern Gardens. So today I'm going to be doing a lot of planting. I'm going to be planting some Oh So Easy double pink roses and some alliums. So the weather's cooled off quite significantly since Jess was here last week. The high today was 60 at my house, and it's just a little cool with a breeze, so I have on long sleeves. But this is the perfect time to get shrubs and perennials in your ground so they can rest over winter and get rooted in well to combat the hot heat next summer. These are the Oh So Easy double pink roses that I will be planting. I decided on this variety simply because I have previously grown an Oh So Easy rose in the front and it did really well, but the double pink, which you can see has blooms here, is just prolific in blooming. I actually put some in my neighbor's yard when we did a small little renovation of her front area in the fall of last year, and they have bloomed non-stop all summer. So I selected this variety for that reason. This is going to go behind the 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 𝗦𝗂𝗶𝗯𝗲 hedge that I did in a previous video, and that whole area is simply going to be this rose variety. The Oh So Easy variety of roses by Proven Winners are really easy to take care of. They're continuously blooming. They don't require deadheading. Although if you do deadhead them, it will make them look a little nicer and encourage more blooms. So I will probably come along and deadhead them a couple times a year. But it's not like a shrub rose that you have to continuously cut on for it to produce blooms. Since they're already budded up, I expect that I will probably get some blooms out of them before this fall. This weekend, I will probably carry you along as I edge this bed right in front of me that contains the kindred spirit oaks. I've got to get that bed completed because I want to get the boxwood hedge that I'm going to be put in there done as soon as possible and get those boxwoods settled in for winter. I did receive good news that the fence is going to be installed the week of October 12th, so let's hope that stays on schedule. And so after October 12th, I'll be able to plant a lot of other things like next to the fence. Because I'll be putting some of those 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 and 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏 right next to the edge of the fence on the back of the property here. I don't want to go ahead and plant those because I could risk getting them damaged since they are so small, and I don't want them to be in the way of the workers. So you're gonna laugh at me because yesterday I received this. And after I got it, I was like, why does this box smell like onions? And then I remembered I was getting a shipment of Serendipity alliums, which are onions. So these are bare root. These came from Walter's Gardens. I like to thank Walter's for sending these out. And I have 25 here. I will probably not use all of them in this location, but these are gonna go along the flagstone pathway that you saw me pick up in my video with Jess. If you haven't watched that video, that gives a great overview of some of the things I'm doing in my garden this fall, so you can check that out. These are bare root, so you can see the nice bulbs here and the roots below. I am just going to be digging a hole with my auger and planting these, but it does have a very nice chive smell. So Serendipity alliums are a sport of Millennium allium, which has been around for quite a long time. Serendipity tends to have a little bluer foliage. I have Millennium alliums already in my garden, and I love them. Although they are a perennial, they do keep their seed heads, which you might be able to see right here behind me, which provides interest in late summer, fall, and even over winter if the seed heads stay on there. They will reseed just a bit, but I'm not concerned about that because they don't reseed as heavily as chives tend to do, or garlic chives, which if you've had garlic chives in your garden, you know they are prolific reseeders. So next to these Millennium alliums, I'm going to be planting peachberry ice heuchera. Those are not going to arrive until probably late October. I can't remember the exact date. So they will be going into the garden right as we're going into cooler weather, which they should survive just fine. But I will pop a picture on the screen of what I'm looking for. So we'll have the peachberry ice as close to the flagstone as possible, and then right behind those will be the Serendipity alliums. And I think it'll be just a nice, beautiful texture for that flagstone path leading into the orchard and provide interest all season, because if you don't know, heuchera and the leaves of the heuchera survive and are somewhat evergreen. During late winter, they can look a little rough, so typically I will come and pull off those old leaves in spring, and it will flush out new growth and just be gorgeous all summer. So a lot of heuchera are mostly shade tolerant. However, Proven Winners has introduced a couple new varieties that says they will take full sun. considering they'll be protected as they get a little older from the late afternoon sun from these 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲, I expect they will do pretty well. If they don't, we may have to come up with something different, but for right now, that's what I'm going with. So now I'm going to go lay out some of these roses and see how many I think I can fit in this spot. I kind of want a mass planting of these, understanding that one day the red bud that I have planted in the center, although really small, will provide more shade, and these will eventually have to come out or be transplanted somewhere else in the garden. But that will be quite a number of years away, I believe. But I think this will be a very beautiful mass of roses until that time. So let's get started. I kind of want this to be a mass planting. I don't have many mass plantings in my yard, and that's something I want to focus on these new garden spaces. So there's going to be a lot of repetition just so that they are big blocks of colors. I am putting 2 roses on this moon gate right here. I haven't decided what those are going to be. I'm leaning towards a rose called 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 by David Austin, or Teasing Georgia, which is a yellow rose. I think because I'm already going to have a lot of pink in this area, 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲𝗲 might make sense since it will be also pink, but also it might be a nice contrast to add some yellow here in this area as well. So 16 roses. Doesn't go too far, but it makes it super easy to plant when you have these little containers. These Oh So Easy roses, I looked up the spacing just because I wanted to get a better idea of how they were going to line up, and they only get 18 inches to 2 foot tall and wide, which is great, which means this area won't be overcrowded. I'm going to rethink the spacing on a couple things. Remember, the tater tot 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 get 1 to 2 foot tall and wide. I recently saw a video from Laura from Garden Answer who indicated that yes, they do get the 2 foot wide. So I don't want them running too much into those tater tots, but 2 foot wide means it's going to grow 1 foot this way and 1 foot that way. So I should still have, you know, another foot here or so to give in space. So I think I'm pretty good with the spacing. I'm going to dig around this area to move some of the mulch out of the way. This is a little tool I got from Lowe's. It's a Corona brand tool that they carry often, and it is a tiny rake, and I love this rake around the garden because it's small and lightweight, and it allows me to just rake a little bit of mulch out of the way, which is what I did when I put down these flagstones. I had someone asking in a video today about how I do these flagstone paths. There's nothing to it. I lay it directly on mulch. I'll just rake the mulch out of the way a little bit, level it out best I can, and then put mulch back around it up to the edges. Over time, the mulch will break down and the stones will appear inset into the ground, but it's not rocket science. I don't do any paver base or anything like that. I just lay it pretty much directly on mulch. And you can see I've laid some down here, and we got really heavy rains for 3 days, so there's some mulch in the way. But I also didn't clean them off very thoroughly. So that's just kind of the layout I'm going for. Let's get some of this mulch moved. I'm not going to be giving these roses any fertilizer because they have some fertilizer in their container from when they arrived to me. So we're just going to be planting these directly in the ground. They don't need a whole lot of growth, and I don't want them putting on a lot of growth anyway before winter, so as to not damage any of that fragile growth going into winter when our temperatures drop significantly. So Oh So Easy roses, one nice thing about all Proven Winners roses are that they are grown on their own rootstock, which means if your rose dies to the ground in winter, that it will come back true to its form. So a lot of roses that you will buy, particularly bare root roses, if they don't say that they are grown on their own root, then you'll sometimes get offshoots of the original rose. There's a specific variety that's used. I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's a really hardy rootstock. And so you'll sometimes see like red bloom shooting out of a rose that was a different color originally. That is the rootstock, and if that happens, you want to trim that all the way back as far as you can underneath the ground. With Oh So Easy roses or any other Proven Winners roses, they will not do that. So if you get any new shoots from the ground, or if it dies back in winter because of really bad weather, it'll come back true to form if it fully survives. The Oh So Easy variety from Proven Winners are also nice simply because they are really disease resistant, and it's one of the reasons they have the name Oh So Easy. Obviously, it's just because they're really easy to care for. And so a funny story is, when we moved into this home, there were several roses in my garden. I wouldn't call it my garden, because at that time I wasn't into gardening that much, but they looked awful. And when I got into gardening, until last year, you would have never hear me say that I am planting a rose in my garden because of that reason. The roses that were here were super old. I don't know what varieties they were. They were constantly had disease on them, and even when I removed them, they continued to come back from the rootstock. So I essentially hated roses until I discovered David Alston roses 2 winters ago, and then I ordered a bunch of David Alston roses, and they've been in my garden since. So I do have problems with pests and bugs. Some seasons are worse than others. This season was really bad. Last season, not so much, but that's just something. If you want beautiful things in your garden, sometimes you have to deal with the consequences of having beautiful things in your garden. This auger just makes the perfect size holes for these roses, so there's not any extra digging involved. It makes it so quick to plant all this stuff. So this area is done. 16 Oh So Easy double pink roses, and it'll be just a mass bank here of pink double blooms. Maybe even this season. Certainly not as full as I would like it to be this season, but every one I put in the ground almost has a rosebud on it. So maybe for my October tour, I'll have some Oh So Easy rose blooms to show you. Now for this section, I have the landscape fabric down. I know landscape fabric is controversial, but I will never be planting anything in that landscape fabric. The only thing the landscape fabric there is to do was to kill the grass so that I could put mulch down on that area between the green giants and the fence when that gets installed. So that's the only purpose of the landscape fabric. If you're trying to perennialize stuff in your garden, you certainly do not want to use landscape fabric, and I do not recommend it. I don't put it in any beds where I'm actually going to be planted. That is my sole use for it, is to put it under the fence so that weeds aren't popping up directly along the fence that I'm putting in and I have to weed eat it against it. So I have 25 alliums. That's only 12 for each side, and then 1 left over. So it's highly possible that it may not be enough, but we'll make it work. So because I know I have 12 roughly alliums on each side, the alliums are probably only going to come to about right here. As I mentioned, the fence will run right here, and I do want an evergreen shrub here, so I think ending the alliums kind of where this bucket is would be a good idea. The peachberry eyes heuchera says it can get 3 foot tall and wide. I'm not sure it will get that tall and wide. That's certainly a really large heuchera, but I think the purple and orange apricot color of the heuchera will go really well together. And if the heuchera spills over onto the flagstone path, that's certainly something that I would want anyway. So I'm going to try and dig the holes for the alliums here, and then when the heuchera come in later in the season, I'll put them here, and that'll give them roughly 1.5 foot and 1.5 foot to spill over. The alliums get 18 to 20-ish, 24 inches tall, and then they are a clumping variety that can also be divided over time. So they will just clump out from the center. So these are bare roots, and it's basically what your garden center will get in the late winter or early spring, and they pot into containers and grow on for you. I'll bring this up so you can see it, how clean and perfect these roots are. They're really nice. So I'm going to lay out 12 bare roots here and kind of lay them along the path to make sure I get my spacing pretty accurate. These are going to form a nice solid hedge for me eventually. They probably won't this year. Looks like I'm getting lots of sawdust over my brown mulch, which is not ideal, but it will decay. I'm not that concerned about the mulch this season anyway. I will come back next season and remulch this bed before everything gets going. But this was just an important layer of first mulch to put over the cardboard that I put down in this area to kill the grass and to start adding some good organic matter to my clay soil. I'm gonna go ahead and lay out the other 12 for this side and make sure that my order came with everything it was supposed to. If you've been following my channel, know that frequently I receive the wrong stuff. I don't know what it is. It's my luck, or lack of luck, I guess, but things arrive late, things don't arrive at all, things arrive and they're the wrong things. What do you know? A perfect 25. Because these are eventually going to be a hedge, I'm just going to try and drill these holes as evenly as possible. No rocket science here. Battery's dead. So these alliums, as with any bare root, obviously it would be better if you spread the roots out and kind of lay them in the hole and cover them with dirt so they're nice and fluffy. That's not an option with this soil that I have here. As you can see, it's just Play-Doh. So I'm basically going to be dropping the roots down in the hole ever so gently and then backfilling it, and I'm actually going to fill it with mulch. I know some people will tell you don't add mulch to your planting hole, it will break down and rob the plant of nitrogen over time. Been doing it for 3 years, people, never had a problem. It adds good organic matter. The mulch that I'm using is highly broken down already, as you saw in my mulching video. I'm gonna only cover these up just a tad. Alliums grow, as you know, the bulb on the very bottom of the soil level. So while I want them mulched really well for winter, I don't want to smother the plants. So if I can barely see the top of the plant right here, that's sufficient. On to side 2. So in this area, I have a little bit more of a problem because I have this catmint planted right here. I'm still going to put the alliums pretty close to this catmint. Normally I wouldn't, but this catmint stayed significantly small, and it also has purple blooms, so if they kind of intermingle, that's fine. The 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲, I imagine, will be right here-ish, a little closer to the sidewalk on this side, and then I'll probably stick an allium right here. You can fudge a little bit with stuff like that, especially on perennials. You can plant them closer, of course. The spacing is a recommendation, in my opinion, and not a rule. Of course, if you're overcrowding and there's a lack of nutrients or water, they will not grow well. But I will be putting these things on drip. One thing, you know, if you've been watching my channel, I preach drip, 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 at least in my area of the country and my house. I typically go through a drought every July and August and don't get much rain. All the stuff in my garden would pretty much just be very unhappy if they didn't get water. So this path will swoop a little bit, so I saved the 13th allium so I could have a little extra leg room to kind of maneuver around to make this swoop. Okay, so this spacing may be a little less thick, but it will grow in over time. I do have a drip line that runs right here It's the drip I added to this new bed, and I want to make sure I do not drill into that because this auger will cut that, and you can see it runs right here. So I will drill right behind it or in front of it. It has been a miracle, everyone, that I haven't hit any rocks while drilling all these holes, because if there's one thing my lawn is also full of, it's rocks. Okay, Jess, this is for you. You're missing out. You left me too soon. The figs are just coming into ripeness. All right, so we're done. 16 oh so easy. For some reason, I cannot say this word, people. 16 oh so easy roses, 25 Serendipity alliums. So one thing I forgot when I was putting in these alliums is one day, probably next year, I want to do a little path around the back of the willow, and it will connect to this existing flagstone path. I'm thinking about just doing stepping stones because it would be a lot of work to find all that stone and transport it. Also be a lot of work to find all those stepping stones and buy them and get them too. So I may end up doing a small rock path like I've done everywhere else. Otherwise it might look kind of weird. Let me know your thoughts. So I will need to probably dig up some of those alliums next year when that gets completed. It's certainly not going to be in the cards for this year. But I'm going to be mindful as I am planting stuff here that is what I intend to do, because if I am not mindful, then I will have a bunch of plants planted in the way before I realize it. So I got a couple shrubs I was just thinking that I could actually put back here instead of evergreens. One is a barberry called sequins, and it is a variegated barberry, so that may look really cool next to the Oh So Easy pink roses. It has white and pink variegation, which is even more interesting, so that's a good option. Eventually it would also lose its color and need more sun as the red bud grew on. Barberries do have spines, and so it won't be next to the path, so I won't have to worry about that. But I am really happy of the progress we got completed tonight. So thank you guys for joining me. I hope you found this video helpful. I will do a quick pass of the things I planted so you can see it more closely. And remember, in a world full of hate, be a light. Take care, everyone, and see you soon. Bye. I bet you all can guess what I smell like. No, it's not onions. It's an ogre.